I'm Eric Tandok from Malaya Movement San Diego.
My name is Elmer Labog. I'm the chairperson of the May 1st Labor Center known as Kilusang Mayun in the Philippines.
I'm Shanika Lazo, and I'm a member of Anakbayan San Diego.
Just for a little bit of background for our listeners, if you could, maybe kind of explain, because you said that this was carried over from Duarte's
Yeah.
term. For the folks that aren't familiar with the history in the Philippines, folks might have heard of Marcos, and that,
Senior.
yes, Marcos Senior. So can you give a little background so that people can understand the context that set for today's problem?
Yeah, under martial law, President Marcos Sr. ruled the country with an iron fist, and even in after succeeding presidencies, the same attacks were happening, just like during the time of Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, and then very recently under the rule of President Duterte, where a big number of victims were recorded, especially those that are victimized by the anti-drug campaign of Duterte. That is why the International Criminal Court has called on Duterte's attention because of these killings. But then, even in the ranks of labor, we have filed 68 cases of killings under Duterte, which already was accepted by the International Labor Organization. But these attacks against workers and people were carried over to the rule of Marcos Jr. now. And so we come to an atmosphere where the impunity is an ongoing thing. As I mentioned, the 68 former score under Duterte have risen to 72 under the rule of Marcos. That is why the Philippine government was included in the investigation with the Committee on Application of Standards as one of the 24 countries that had been very violently attacking workers and in violation of international conventions. So it's more or less the backdrop on how we came to this situation at present.
So help us understand, why is labor being attacked in the Philippines?
Well, the ILO high-level tripartite mission has clearly underscored the fact that the government has a fixed mindset of attacking the labor movement and including it in its counterinsurgency operation. The previous government of Duterte and even Marcos now are not really accepting these complaints against them, especially the attacks on trade unions, the struggle for higher wages, and the demand to end the mode of contractual labor, meaning the contracted out labor force. So instead of really heeding and listening on about these complaints, it manifests its answer by attacking the legitimate demands
Wow.
of the worker. So these were the important conclusions that the ILO high-level tripartite mission came when they came to Manila, arrive at, especially with the intrusion of the police and military in purely labor matters had been noted by the mission that came over last January in the Philippines. Also, it had taken note that even if those complaints were filed many years back, it had been very slow. The government, I mean, had been very slow in coming up with answers, concrete and sincere solutions on the gripes and the problems that had been aired by the various trade unions in the Philippines.
So it's an attack on the workers who are trying to have a united voice to to basically oppose the working conditions, to raise awareness about having wages that are livable. So a lot of the struggles parallel in the Philippines parallel the struggles that we have here in the United States. Can you talk to us about the KMU and the movement, like what you stand for, like what is the organization? Because I know the labor, the how labor is structured over there is a little bit different.
Yeah.
You all have sectoral or industry bargaining.
Yeah, the KMU was incepted in 1980 under the reign of martial law. It was in August that we formed the organization while we were still under martial law, and that of course we had our baptism of fire during that time because our unions were constantly attacked by the forces of Marcos, especially when we launched activities that would enhance the demands that we have, like wages, the security of jobs, and of course to fight for the unionization of various companies. But then there was this program where the mindset of government is that in order to develop the economy, you will have to invite foreign investors, and so this caused the proliferation of special economic zones, or what is called the export processing zones in the Philippines. And started under Marcos, where when you are inside the economic zones, the locators, as they call the investors, have the liberty to really do business without being disturbed, as the no union, no strike policy had been imposed in those economic zones. So any attempt to really organize the unions and to launch strikes would be a very serious crime under Marcos then. So we suffered a lot of arrests and detention for such a long time. And in fact, our first ever president or chairperson of the KMU died because of prolonged detention, and he was only released by Marcos at a time where he was almost dying, and because he didn't want our leader, Bert Olalia, to die in jail, then he was released a few months before he finally met his fate.
Wow.
And yeah, these things are ongoing. So the development paradigm of government of inviting investors still is the main mindset of government to develop the economy. But then they would have to sacrifice the important rights of workers just to really impress investors into coming to the country, and promising them lower wages and the system of contractual labor. And this system remains because there were two laws that were passed uh, during the Aquino regime, which would guarantee the regionalization of wages. Where when it's regionalized, then it's a system where the farther you are from the city centers, the lower your wages are. So there's no uniform national wage level, which is really a good condition for the investors. And second, a law that guarantees the legality of practicing contractualization. So these were the offers that uh, they had for investors in the country, and this is being enjoyed
So
by
even
big
today, still.
it still exists, and this is being enjoyed by both multinational companies as well as companies that are Filipino owned
So
now.
so for the Philippines, foreign and domestic companies. So we're looking at multinational companies that are coming into the Philippines under the guise of bringing jobs to economically develop the country, but really what they're doing is they're trying to make the most profit off the backs of the
Right.
workers by exploiting them, by going to another country under a regime that is anti-worker, anti-people, anti-democratic. It sounds like.
Yeah. That's of course every investor's interest is to increase profit, and thus in order to increase profit, you will have to increase the constant capital side and to reduce the variable capital, which is us workers, where we do not own the instruments of production, as this is all controlled by the capitalist side. And so it's a contradictory relations where as you push for further profits, then you reduce. You have to practically reduce the wages and benefits as well as other important benefits of workers. Not only in the Philippines,
Yeah,
but these
that's
relations
everywhere.
exists
Absolutely.
everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
And so it's I think it's important for, our listeners at home to really understand the parallels and how our struggles are linked, like globally. That the companies that are in the United States are actually going into other developing nations and taking advantage. And we have members here that are suffering. We have unions here that are suffering. We talk a lot about the contracting or outsourcing of jobs overseas. We recently, AT&T, local CWA, Communication Workers of America, 9509, my old union, lost a call center. It was one of their biggest call centers, thousands of workers up across overseas. And, we know they're in different countries, especially the Philippines too, right? So how can folks in the United States show solidarity, like help with making sure that our sisters and brothers and siblings in the Philippines aren't exploited? Because what you're talking about it's beyond exploitation. This is the fact that labor organizers, activists from democratic institutions, KMU, one of the most democratic labor organizations, social movements, they're murdering, they're assassinating folks. This is insane. This is like when, Dr. King was at the sanitation workers strike in Memphis and he was assassinated. He was there to fight for the workers who were fighting for economic and racial justice, which we know are tied together, hand in hand. And the same thing with the exploitation of. So how can folks here show solidarity with the folks? Because we're not hearing any of this. We're not hearing any of this. And, as a movement, we have about 11% of our population or of the working folks in the United States are unionized, which it's a small fraction, but it's still a force that could potentially, build, right? And we're hoping we're growing. But what can we do to show solidarity? What can we do to spread the message? What can we do to?
I think the latest killing of organizer under KMU who's been there since Marcelo, Jude Tadeos Fernandez, has landed in the eyes and ears of the American workers loud and clear. And this has come to a point where the AFL-CIO, which is the umbrella organization of all trade union centers in the U.S., came out with a strong condemnation of Jude, and it has pointed out to the government as having had a knowledge about his killing. And it was a good thing that this strong condemnation has reverberated, not just in the U.S. but in many parts of the globe, and thus it had invited a lot of labor organizations to follow suit into coming out with their statement of condemnation and calling for the Philippine government to take immediate action. And therefore, it would likewise help as much if the various unions in the trade union movement in the U.S. follow suit and come out with a strong statement of denunciation about these latest killings, and this underscores the fact that the reported number of deaths wherein Jude Fernandez was the 72nd killed is an ongoing attack against workers in the Philippines. This would likewise expose the other forms of attacks that are being unleashed, that is being unleashed by the Marcos government, as I said, had been carried over from the regime of President Duterte. And so, as a matter of action, it is important really to inform our general membership in the unions in the U.S. to be aware of the conditions that are taking place now in the Philippines. Even wages compared to the U.S. are almost more than 10 times the amount that's being paid in the case of the Philippines. This explains why a lot of foreign companies would still flock to the Philippines, like the call centers, where a lot of these are North American companies, where the availability of excess labor is really gargantuan, and that the ability, for example, of Filipino workers to speak the English language is so abundant that you get the same talent that would be available in the U.S., and yet you pay them much, much lesser than their counterpart in the United States. So it's not really true, for example, that the companies would go to the Philippines because they would like to generate jobs. As we discussed earlier, it is because they wanted to gain more profit and not really to be benevolent and give jobs to the Filipinos. With the very bleak condition that we have, for example, there are wages of workers now are lowest, perhaps in many parts of the globe, where the amount of 11.77 US dollars in terms of the highest wage rate is the actual amount being given to workers in the Philippines. Whilst in the U.S. you're paid by the hour.
Yeah.
That's in the Philippines, that's the amount for a day's work,
Oh my
and
goodness.
it's so really exploitative condition in terms of the workforce, and then with a big number of non-regular workforce, as well as the number of workers, especially professionals and technical people, exceeding the Philippines because of these bleak conditions, then you find a situation where the general cost of labor is so low that it would translate to more profits for local as well as foreign investors in the Philippines.
So the union wage is about 11, a little more than
11.77 a
11.77
day.
A day.
Yeah.
So, and what is for non-union wages? Like what does that look like?
Well, there's massive violation of those who are non-unionized, but then we the unionized part of the labor movement would always assert that any wage adjustment should encompass even the non-unionized workforce in the Philippines, and so these policies are being carried out by the government. Especially, we were successful in creating the broadest unity of workers of all shades and colors of all regardless of political inclination, in uniting for wages, for against contractualization, and against these violent attacks unleashed against the labor movement in the Philippines.
So what do you think it's going to take to change the situation?
It is there is a need to change the rulers in the country because uh, they wouldn't really come out with programs and policies that are beneficial to the great number of Filipino people, but they cater to them to their own selfish interest and amass a lot of wealth, like having confidential funds in their office, where the office of the president and vice president would have confidential funds without really accounting where these confidential funds are being spent.
In the United States, we call that a slush fund.
It is a stolen fund in the
Yeah,
case of the
that's it.
Philippines.
So basically, the president and the vice president get basically a war chest to do anything they want.
Correct.
And you were saying, how much did the vice president spend?
Well, I think she's being asked to account for like 175 million, where he spent such amount in a matter of 17 days. Thus, the Commission on Audit has called her attention to report back how and why he have to spend that much amount, and that is why she has a case in Congress to explain this expenses before the budget of her offices would be approved. But then he's venting her ire on the Congress people who are merely asking her to account for the money, which essentially are tax money of the people, and so it is but right and just that the representatives of people in government would ask where this money would go. They have the very right. As the American people has also the very right to ask for accountability from the U.S. government.
Absolutely.
Why they're sending money to the Philippine military and police, and yet these are the very forces that attacks the ranks of labor in the Philippines, which causes more deaths, more repression, more jailing, and worse, the extra
So
judicial killing.
the United States is funding the same military and police that are repressing, like violently suppressing the labor movement in the Philippines. And so it sounds like that's another action that could be taken is the call for the divestment in the Philippine military.
Yeah, actually, in 2020, our organization, along with other alliances, launched a campaign in the U.S. to push this bill called the Philippine Human Rights Act in Congress. And it was championed by Susan Wild from Pennsylvania. And basically, it would suspend U.S. military aid to the Philippine military and police until they cease their human rights violations and hold the perpetrators accountable. Here in San Diego, we've been able to get Juan Vargas and Sarah Jacobs to sign on to the bill. But every year it has to be reintroduced because it hasn't been able to gain enough.
Traction.
Yeah. But that's one concrete way that folks can call upon their representatives to support that bill.
Okay. What was the bill again?
Philippine Human Rights Act.
Philippine Human Rights Act, and we should expect it to go through next year again.
It'll likely be reintroduced again next year. Yeah.
So we'll definitely, when it's reintroduced, we would definitely like to hear about it so we can share with folks what the bill is and how they can support like real time.
Yeah.
That would be great. So tell me about Anakbayan. What is Anakbayan?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Satomi, that the struggles we face here are, the fight of the working class is really an international fight, right? And so I'm part of Anakbayan San Diego, which is an organization of Filipino youth, and we're an international organization. So as Anakbayan USA, we're an overseas chapter of Anakbayan Philippines. And so we really see ourselves as an extension of the national democratic movement back home in the Philippines. The conditions that Bong was talking about of workers back home in the Philippines, we are not separate from those conditions because in the first place, if the economy was developed for the people in the Philippines, then there would be jobs back home. We would not have to be forced to migrate just for livelihood. And actually, under Marcos Sr., who is the father of the current president, Bong Marcos Jr., under him, the labor export policy was really systematized so that, to answer his so-called answer to the labor crisis in the Philippines, the huge surplus labor force, was to export our own people. Where, now we're in a situation where every single day, more than 6,000 Filipinos leave our country.
Every day?
Every day.
Every day.
Daily. Just to...
6,000?
Yeah, just for livelihood, just to sustain their families. And a lot of them are separated, they leave their kids, they leave their parents, whoever it is that they're taking care of, just to go overseas and send money back home. And so that's why so many of us are here. That's why, and here in San Diego. And we come here, and yeah, you're right, the struggles we face are similar. We come here and we're still exploited. It's still the same system of exploitation that we're faced with back home, although, as Bong was sharing, the minimum wage is higher, so, you could make more money here, which is why so many people come here.
Yeah.
But the system still continues,
Broken,
with
right?
that, broken families. And so for us, as Filipino youth, although Anakbayan San Diego, a lot of us are Filipino Americans, we were born here, but we do not see ourselves as separate from the conditions back home. Especially because growing up in San Diego, growing up in the US, you can really see how, we're really not separate because of that collusion with the US government, with our government here. Even
it sounds like my familiarity with the organization back when I was a youth organizer a long time ago is basically the call for
I was about to bring that up. You here in the US, you really see, different examples of really inspiring worker struggles, where Jollibee, is a Philippine corporation that really championed contractualization in the Philippines. They not only own Jollibee, but they also own Chowking and
for folks that are not familiar with Jollibee, it is a restaurant chain that has chicken, spaghetti.
It's basically like the McDonald's of the Philippines. That popular.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know it was that.
Yeah,
popular.
it's probably more popular than McDonald's. Actually,
That's pretty popular.
Yeah. But they're a really large corporation that they own Jollibee, they own Red Ribbon, and
Red Ribbon,
and Chowking too. So they have these different.
But they even expanded. They're so big now that they even bought out Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf and Smashburger.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah, so that's owned by a Philippine company now.
So not only do multinational corporations operate in the Philippines, but it's also these Philippine corporations are also expanding overseas, and so like I said, they are really a champion of contractualization back home, so exploiting our people back home. But even here, here in San Diego, there's 3 locations, and Mira Mesa, National City, Chula Vista, and the majority of people who work there are Filipino migrants. And in New Jersey, there's an ongoing struggle. There's actually a case with the UnionOrB that was filed because the workers there, they really came together and wrote a letter to present to management about, the different labor law violations that have been going on. There's not contractualization here, but there's like, the misclassification of workers, or just even the keeping workers part-time, so that they don't get to have benefits, and also like not getting paid overtime, right? Different issues like that.
Wage theft.
Yeah, wage theft.
So folks are being exploited right here in our very own backyard.
Exactly. Yeah. So workers in New Jersey came together and wrote a letter to present to management. But before they could even do that, they were actually several of them were actually terminated. Which it's actually been found that it was an illegal termination, but it's still an ongoing case where the demand. Actually, today is the National Day of Action for justice for the Jollibee workers, where their demands are to be reinstated, to get back pay, and to get an apology from Jollibee. And it's really an inspiring example, because these workers could have easily just kind of moved on with their lives, gone to apply to jobs that are higher paying, or whatever it is, but they really understand that they have to take collective action together, and that they want to go back and work there, so that they can keep pushing for better working conditions, not only for their store, but even nationwide and back home in the Philippines too, and internationally, because Jollibee is an international corporation. So yeah, it's really an inspiring example of the workers coming together and understanding that they can't just leave, because they're still going to be exploited no matter where they go, or the conditions at that store and internationally are still going to go on if they don't take a stand together. So yeah, today is the National Day of Action. Actually, it's for people to show their support, however it is, like online, or even
Would you suggest people show their support today?
Mm-hmm.
Should they go on like social media? Like, is there a petition they can sign?
Yeah, they have a website. It's called Justice for Jollibee Workers.
Justice for Jollibee Workers.
Yeah.
We'll have that up somewhere. Justice for Jollibee Workers.
And then they also have Instagram too, that you can do social media actions and support.
We will definitely share that.
There is an existing law in your labor system, which is called the Joy Silk Doctrine, wherein it provides that wherever workers are sacked because of complaining and attempt to build unions, the NLRB can have the power to ask for management to reinstate them immediately with back wages, and to skip the petition of election and actual conduct of the
that
election.
Is a brand spanking new law.
It is important that I think trade unionists in the U.S., especially those who are wanting to form the unions, to study this provision and to make good of its availability.
Yeah.
As I believe there are several unions where this provision of the Joy Silk Doctrine has been imposed, like the CEMEX case, where
CEMEX case.
An organizer has been sacked and ordered reinstated, and to skip the election, but then to have a direct recognition of the union. I think these are valuable lessons that are to be taken into account by unions all over the U.S.
Oh, 100%. That's going to be a huge organizing tool. That was a big victory for us. For finally, especially because we have broken labor laws in the United States. Usually, if someone is fired, or for concerted activity that's supposed to be protected, the responses or the punishment for the company is you put a posting on the wall, maybe you reinstate the worker, give them back wages. But by the time they drag it out, the case is dragged on so long, they have another job or something, but delay tactics. All employers use it, but yes, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. The new law is the ruling, the SMEX ruling by the Supreme Court. The fact that now that employers try to mess with workers during election goes straight to recognition of their union.
That's right.
That's
Um,
powerful.
it, it is very powerful. And hopefully we can have more laws like that we can, be a model for other places, and to spread the word of building strong labor laws. I mean, we don't have many. Not too many here. We're working on it too here.
I think it would be the collective actions of the workers themselves that would make laws
Yes.
that are favorable to the
Yes.
working class. Without workers' action, then you cannot enact laws that are really favorable to the working people, as it is the collective strength that really
Yes.
pushes the policymakers to come up with
Yes.
progressive laws favorable to the workers and ordinary people in society. And it's a universal truth, not just in the U.S. but all over the world. This is a fact of life. Where without action, then there's no reaction from the other parties.
That's 100% true. I 100% agree. We have to act, and choosing not to act, or
Silence.
being silent is making a choice not to act. So we always have a choice. We may not necessarily like the choices that we're given, but we always have a choice. And so hopefully our listeners will choose to support and do all the things that they can to make sure that our siblings in the Philippines know that they have the support of labor here in the United States. Anything else before we part?
Yeah. And another way to take action too is, to really confront these multinational corporations and global leaders, global policymakers that are enacting all these neoliberal attacks on workers worldwide. In November is going to be the next APEC summit. APEC stands for Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation. So all these different leaders of 21 member economies, they're called, are gonna meet in San Francisco in November to basically make different trade agreements, business deals, to increase the exploitation of workers here, workers in the Asia Pacific, and to really open up the Asia Pacific, including the Philippines, to more exploitation or resource extraction, environmental degradation, and so yeah, so Marcos Jr. himself is actually coming here to the U.S. And Biden will be there too, as well as different corporations that are here in San Diego. Qualcomm, which has its headquarters here. Qualcomm is the second largest employer in San Diego. They're one of the platinum sponsors of APEC, as well as Kaiser. They donated $1 million to hosting APEC when there's these ongoing strikes, like labor struggle for higher wages with the Kaiser workers. And so they're really there to push forward their own interests, the interests of corporations rather than the interests of workers. So that's going to be in November. But, nationally we are organizing, and we're going to take action together, where November 11th is going to be the People's Counter Summit, and November 12th is going to be the huge rally against the APEC summit. But there will be smaller actions too, just throughout the convening of the APEC summit, so that we can really confront these different so-called leaders. And so we're going to be sending a contingent from San Diego, and people from all over the U.S. are welcome. But here in San Diego, if you're interested in coming with us, we could figure it out together. We'll figure out carpools, like housing and all that. We're here to work together and really be there together. Because as we're talking about our collective action, our collective unity is our strength. These world leaders are coming together. Well, we're gonna come together too, and we know that the repression that our people face back home is also not it's not a unique thing, right? It's backed by the U.S. government, and then they actually the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, just declared a special national security event where they're expecting civil disobedience and terrorist acts, where they're really conflating civil rallying with terrorism. So the red tagging in the Philippines is not something that it's something that is absolutely backed by and learned from the U.S. government. And
100%.
But
after 9/11.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But yeah, these allegations, we know what we're doing is just, and it's really just more of a reason to keep going and keep fighting, because we know that we're not doing anything wrong. They're really pushing forward what's called IPEF, or Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, to really, and the reason why it's called a framework is because they, since it's not an agreement, they're able to make these different deals without going through Congress. So they're the ones that are undemocratic, and we are there to show them really what are the people's interests, what are our demands as workers, and so that's something that everyone can join, and hope to see you in San Francisco.
100%.